I'm Alan.
And I'm Jake.
And welcome to Crimicide True Stories. And 'tis the season to get scary with 4 true scary Christmas stories from Reddit. So without further ado, let's get into the stories.
This first story was posted to our True Scary Stories by Reddit user Ninja Jesse. I was about 15 at the time. We always had huge Christmas parties. Easily 30 people would come over. There was drinking, drugging, loud music, and laughs. Well, this particular Christmas, I sat in the kitchen with some friends. There was a door that led to our enclosed back porch that also held the staircase to the basement. We would keep tables on the porch that held food because our kitchen was little and everyone brought a dish. So long after we opened the presents and ate, my dad and 3 uncles were feeling pretty buzzed, and let me say, my dad was 6'2", 200 pounds, and my uncle's not as tall, but all crazy Detroit-raised Irishmen, who I've seen put the fear of God into men 3 times their size, and were not men to mess with back in those days, even now. As I said, I was sitting at the kitchen table with friends when I saw a man wearing blue jeans and a red silk top come up from the basement stairs. At first I thought he was a friend of one of my uncles. "Hey, why are you in the basement?" I asked. The man said nothing. He came walking towards me. Just then, my grandma yelled, "Who the fuck are you?" Before the man could answer, my dad and 3 uncles had spotted this crazy man. They started beating him, yelling at him. "What the fuck are you doing?" the man said. "Wrong house." But he came from the basement, so he wasn't believed. They were beating him wildly. His nose burst open, his lips burst open, he was coughing up blood. They kicked him brutally in his torso and busted a beer bottle open on his face. He managed to get outside into the yard and started running, but we had a German Shepherd named Lacey, and she was out there and attacking the man. He was screaming and trying to get over the fence as my uncle's dad and dog all attacked him. Lacey had grabbed his thigh and ripped the jeans and flesh. She jumped up and regained her grasp and shook violently with his thigh in her mouth. The man, whose hair was blonde when I first spotted him, was covered in so much blood his hair gleamed red under the moonlight. He screamed as Lacey ripped at his flesh and fists smacked hard into his face and body. Finally, the man fell over the fence. He began to crawl. Then I think it dawned on him he was free, so he stood up and tried to run only to fall on his face with a loud smack I'll never forget. I ran in the house, frantically trying to think I was dreaming, but the amount of blood on that porch said, "You're awake, very awake." My mobster protectors came in about 15 minutes later and laughed. Me, my mom, aunts, and cousins went to work to clean up all the food mixed with the blood. Have you ever had to mop up a puddle of pooled blood? It seared into my brain, the smell, seeing it streak beneath the mop head on the white tiles. I was shaking, thinking, is he dead? They never called the cops, and I don't know what happened to the unconscious man in the alley face down, bloody and beaten. I don't want to know. He apparently broke a window and climbed through on that Christmas. All I know is I think he was put into a dumpster that night, and I am fairly certain if he lived, he still has the scars today.
Oh my god!
Holy shit, what a fucking adventure. Obviously, breaking and entering is terrible, but oh my god, this guy's straight up not having a good time.
No, that guy literally had the worst luck.
There's a point where it's too much. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into the next story.
This story was submitted to our True Scary Stories by Reddit user JaneDoe8809. Trigger warnings, mentions of suicide, drug addiction, and depression. This story is dark and very sad. To fully understand this story and my theory, you need some background information. In 2017, there was a shootout in my neighborhood between the cops and a man who I believe was committing suicide by cop. My mom was the manager for the owner of the apartment, so she knew everything going on, and she told me that the guy was a veteran who was hit by a truck. The guy became addicted to his painkillers, and the doctor stopped prescriptions. When he found out he'd be living with that, he then went on to try and commit suicide by cop. But the guy was paranoid and wouldn't come out of the apartment, so it turned into this long thing until he was killed at 4 in the morning. Going back to how my mom was a manager and knew almost everything in that apartment complex, she tried to call him and help calm him down. Only he responded with a threat that chilled my very core. "If you don't shut up with your Christian crap, I'll shoot your apartment and I have the guns to do so." After that call, my mother told the police station because she had me and my siblings there and another family that was evicted. At this time, I was 16 and my stepdad was locked out because of the eviction, so I felt really scared. I remember one of the daughters saw me crying and I wanted to say, "You try having your family threatened," but I didn't. It wouldn't have helped. And my room was up in the front because of threat. Everyone was ordered to stay in the back 2 rooms, my mom's and my brother's room. I ended up passing out around 3 a.m. When I woke up at noon the next day, it all felt like a horrible dream. Until I realized a bullet had come through our front window, bounced off the corner of my door, and hit my mirror in the room. And we never found the bullet shell, not even when we moved and the room was emptied. I used to face the window because my sister didn't like the feeling of me facing her as she slept. So I usually gave in since she was my little sister. After this shootout, I saw a man with red eyes and dark hair. I had never seen this man before, but I had a gut feeling he was the shooter. I prayed to God for protection until I passed out, literally kept repeating it. The neighborhood was never the same after that. It changed. Before, children were free to come and play around the neighborhood until dark. Occasionally a drug dealer would move in there and there'd be less kids, but that never lasted long until they were evicted or caught. Either way, they left. But even years later, it still had that eerie ghost town feeling. Now, sometimes kids can be seen playing outside, but an adult is always close by or they're on their porch. Another important note is that there was another family that we were really close with. We were always over at each other's houses, and even to this day, we're still close. And I am a medium. I can sense energies and sometimes see entities. Now, let's skip to late March 2019. I had just turned 18. The family friend from our old apartments, well, let's call her Jackie, her son Timmy, and her husband Luke. Luke was away on business, and Jackie needed a reliable babysitter or a nanny. At the time, I was Timmy's babysitter, but my mom had to give me rides, and she was usually late. She always is. Well, at the time, my mother and I were on a rocky path. So I told her that I would just be his nanny, and she knew the situation I had at home, so she agreed and said I could stay as long as I wanted. It was great. I finally had my own space and room. I was on my own and felt like I could breathe, but I wouldn't be staying much longer than I had to. Now, when it was just Jackie, Timmy, and I was never really home alone, but I did have a couple odd experiences. My room was in the very back, closest to my old house and the shooters as well. I was once changing out of my hoodie, and as I was just pulling it over my chest, I felt like I saw an old man staring at me. The scary part was that it wasn't from outside of my window, but inside the room with me. I will always remember his face. He had a pale face, a blank expression. His eyes were black pits, and instead of having a bunch of wrinkles, he had cracks in his skin. Then in the shower, it'd feel like hands would reach through the shower curtain. When I'd take a bath and sink under, I'd feel like a man would lean over me with his hands behind his back. He felt different from the first man, but related. Other than those few times, I felt fine in the house. I even told Jackie about it. Once Luke came back home, I wasn't ready to go home yet, so I slept on their couch and was pretty much a live-in babysitter. One night, all three of them went to see Jackie's mother in a nursing home. It was the first night I was home alone. The living room has always felt safe in Jackie's house. We don't know why, but it just doesn't happen in that room. But since I was sleeping on the couch, I spent most of my time in the living room. I was watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch and ended up having to go to the bathroom. Here's a quick description of the 3-bedroom style. There's the living room and one bedroom connected to that. Then there's a wall separating the living room from the kitchen. Then a hallway with the bathroom and 2 back bedrooms. Well, the bathroom was the first door after the kitchen, which was connected to the closet of my room. Walking to the bathroom, I kept feeling like something was going to jump out at me. It felt like it would be a little demonic creature or some evil little creature. I told myself I was just on edge because it was late and I was alone watching Sabrina in a neighborhood that no longer felt safe. It wasn't just that. As I was in the bathroom, I heard a growl from the closet behind me. They had no pets, and it felt so dark. I was immediately terrified. I ran out to the living room. I wouldn't stop staring at the hallway as I called my best friend. I told her what was happening and that I was coming over. I tried to go back to grab my shoes, but as soon as I walked into the hallway, I felt extremely unwelcomed. I was fortunate enough to have my money in my jeans. I called a cab and waited outside. I was sobbing. A lady saw me and came up to ask if I was okay. All I could say was, "Don't go in that house." Soon after, a cab pulled up. I thought it was mine, so I walked up, only to see it was Jackie and her family. Immediately, she asked what was wrong. I just said I had to get out of the house and I would be at my friend's. I was in the car ride, crying and barefoot. The man thought that he was saving me from an abusive situation. I told him I was fine and everything was okay. I didn't say anything else. That guy also scammed me out of 13 bucks. Usually it was just $7, but I only had a 20, so I asked if he had change. He said no, but we could stop at Circle K, so I could ask him to break it. I told him no. I just wanted to get to my friends, plus I was barefoot, and it was easy to tell I'd been crying for a good 20 minutes. That was the darkest thing I had ever felt. I didn't return to that house for a while after that, not even to collect my things, and I will never be alone in that house again. I visit there often now, especially since her daughter, Alice, came to live with Jackie, but I am hesitant to go back to the back of that house. This next story I hadn't heard from the source, but from Jackie, who had befriended the new girl in the neighborhood. We'll call this girl Girl X. According to Jackie, Girl X's boyfriend and her moved into the neighborhood. If you already guessed that they now live in the old shooter's apartment, you're absolutely correct. Girl X's boyfriend tells Girl X that he sees a man in their room. If I believe correctly, he tells him to do things. And there was a case of their brand new Christmas lights flickering. I actually have a few theories on what could have happened. The guy haunted the neighborhood, and especially my family since the bullet disappeared in my room. But once we moved, he moved on to Jackie's family since we were always over there and couldn't follow us to our new house since the bullet wasn't taken with. The second theory is actually really dark. I believe that when you are mentally unstable in any way, entities love it and are attracted to it, especially because it will make you easier to control. So the event attracted the attention of a dark entity that fed off of it and stayed there, or the negative energy manifested into some dark entity. My third theory is a mixture of the first and second. I believe this because of the two different male entities that felt different but connected. Let me know down below what you think about this experience.
A lot to unpack there,
It's a pretty long story there.
and pretty dark. Without getting too caught up into bad feels, let's get into the next story.
Yeah.
This next story was posted to our True Scary Stories by Reddit user DemonicPie13. When I was a kid, my grandma had toys in her house for when us grandkids would come over for visits. She had many toys for us to play with, but at the time I loved her Furbies. I would play with them all the time when we would go over. Well, one Christmas when I was 5 or 6, I got a Furby for Christmas. This Furby was from my grandma, and it came from her house. At her house, the Furby worked like a normal one would. I was excited when I saw it. Well, after opening the rest of the gifts up with my mother and my brothers, I was wanting to play with the new Furby. I sat with my mother and grandma as we turned on the Furby. Nothing. The Furby didn't do anything. We thought it was odd and turned him off and on again. Still nothing. So then they changed the batteries and turned him on. I gave it a go and tried talking to the Furby. It complained about it being too loud. We all thought that was odd. Everyone quieted down and turned off the TV. I tried again talking to it. It then complained about it being too bright, so we turned off the lights. Once the lights were off, it worked fine. It creeped everyone out. It had never done this before at my grandparents' house ever. After that day, I tossed him into my closet and only pulled him out once to show my ex-friend how creepy it was. After that, I forgot about him until a year or two later. My mother was cleaning out old toys I no longer played with. She got rid of that Furby because I didn't play with him because of what happened with him. I still don't trust Furbies to this very day.
Furbies have always been creepy. They've never not been creepy. So I don't know
Why is there not a movie yet about Furbies that come to life and kill your whole family? We did it with Gremlins.
That is true. We did it with Gremlins. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed these 4 true scary Christmas stories that were picked randomly from Reddit.
Well, actually, it'd be weird if you enjoyed these 4 true scary Christmas stories because we've said 3.
Oh.
This story was submitted to our True Scary Stories by BloodRed287. I don't think I have to say this, but I swear this story is completely true. So this happened a few years ago. When I was in 5th grade going into 6th grade, I started piano lessons. I absolutely hated playing piano. The organ piano player at my church offered me free lessons because my mom helped out a lot. He was a very nice man. I just hated playing piano. My family had bought an old piano from someone my family knew, so I'd be able to practice for an hour at home every day. One night near Christmas, when my brother was at a friend's house and my parents were at a dinner from my dad's work, I was practicing piano. The only lights that were on the top of the piano so I could see the music, and the dim lights from the Christmas tree. The piano was against a wall with my back to the door. To my right was the hallway that leads to the bedrooms, and on my left was the living room where the tree was. There was no sound other than me occasionally hitting a key. I started having this weird feeling of dread when I looked down the hallway. That's when I started hearing something that was creeping me the fuck out. It sounded like breathing. I kept trying to convince myself it was just a fan, but I was still unsure. I sat at the piano and started really practicing, just in case there really was a person down there waiting for me to walk down the hall. I had seen a few horror movies, so I knew not to move near a sound. After a few minutes, I told myself, out loud, that I should get some water. So I stood up and walked to the kitchen that was on the other side of the wall. I didn't have a phone in 6th grade, so I would usually use my parents' or use the house phone. The second I stood, I heard a small gasp-like sound coming from the hallway. I pretended not to hear it. In the biggest drawer closest to the floor, my dad kept a few of his smaller tools and nails and stuff. I remember seeing a large box cutter type thing. I grabbed it, then I grabbed the house phone that was in the kitchen. I accidentally grabbed the phone too hard, causing me to hit a button that let out a beep. The sound is never really that loud, but with it being nighttime and me being home alone, it was almost deafening to me in my panicked state. I then heard a low grunt-like sound coming from the hall, then footsteps. My fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, mixing with my adrenaline, and I ripped open the sliding back door and ran to the side of my house, basically flying over my fence, dropping the box cutter in the process. I ran as fast as I could down the block because I could hear him trying to get over the fence. I looked back like an idiot and saw the silhouette of what I'm guessing was a 6-foot-tall man chasing me. I started screaming bloody murder while trying to call 911, but I was too far away from my house for the phone to work. That's when I saw one of my neighbor's lights come on, and I ran over and started banging on their door. I quickly looked to see where the man was, and he started sprinting the opposite way. My neighbor let me in and called the police and helped calm me down. I had somehow escaped with my life and only a few minor scrapes and cuts on my knees and feet. When the police got to my house, they figured out how the man got in. My brother had accidentally left his window cracked open, and the man was able to cut open the screen and open the window the rest of the way. They also found a rope, duct tape, and multiple knives on the ground of the hallway. My neighbor across the street had a camera facing the road because people had been stealing mail. The police looked through the footage and found one man would watch our house for a few minutes every few hours for a week. He knew I was home alone that night. For the next few weeks, they had cops watching our house until we moved. They never caught the man, but he is the reason I now have severe anxiety and paranoia.
Jesus Christ. That's, pretty gross.
Yeah, he was going to kill him.
Yeah. Maybe brought the mood down a little bit for this holiday season, but we hope
Some highs, some lows.
pretty much all of them are lows.
I don't know, the first one was pretty ridiculous, but I think that's mostly because we made
First
fun
one
of
was
it.
pretty ridiculous. Yeah. We always do voiceovers, so you're not going to hear us make fun of the sheer amount of violence isn't cool, but Jesus Christ. Sometimes it can be too much.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, we hope you guys enjoyed these 4 true random Christmas scary stories from Reddit. We hope you guys enjoy your holiday season. We'll see you in the next episode.